So when did you meet Mom?
Well, I don't remember what year. Might have been 63 or somewhere in there. She went to the church that I went to. And they had a pretty good youth group. And so we dated, and eventually I asked her to marry me, and we got married and had a nice wedding at the church.
And when did you build this house? 77?
Right, we bought the property in March of 77, I think. We had put some money on another piece of property off of Foster Road, and it fell through, and now I'm glad it did, because that would have been too hilly to get up and Foster Road at about, I don't know, 150th or whatever. It is junky, and this was much better location. Evidently we started building not too long after we bought the property. It took quite a while to build the house, and we lived in different places while it was being built. Well, we had a condominium that I had rented out, and over by Mount Hood Community College, and I think it was empty at the time. So prior to that, we stayed in a little, almost like a motel unit thing. It was just incredibly cramped. But then we moved into the condominium. That was better. And eventually I sold that and made a little bit of money on it and put it onto this house. But this house, most of the house was paid for. Again, somewhere in 60–70%. So that enabled us to have a more ambitious home, and not have a house payment that was too terribly bad. So, but that's kind of it in a nutshell. It was a lot of work to clear the property and put the yard in and all the things. It was.
You know, you lived through the Nixon Watergate scandal. You know, how does that compare to what's going on with Trump?
Well, there's many similarities, and then you could also say there isn't. Nixon was a very paranoid person, and he was bent on doing devious stuff, and he had the dirty tricksters, and he wanted to hold on to power. That was whatever it took. And he was a liar. He didn't lie as much as Trump. Nobody could do that. But yeah, I guess the difference, and I think the crimes and misdemeanors in the current administration are still unfolding, but they appear to be there. And in Nixon cases, it captivated the American people. We relentlessly watched TV and the Senate proceedings, and as this thing unfolded, and it took a couple of years, it wasn't just overnight. And people think the Mueller thing is dragging on, but so did the Nixon thing. You have to get it right. And eventually the circle got tighter and the knot was slipping on his neck. And it did get back. It was Nixon. And definitely, if there's smoke, there's fire. And the odd thing is that today the nation seems to be divided on it, and it doesn't show that much interest in, it's not 24/7 captivating everybody's mind. And that's disturbing, because it should. These allegations and that man that's in the White House and his cast of characters that are around him is just appalling. And I don't know whether the American people just sort of given up and accepted all politicians and people in power are crooked, or they're just apathetic. But I think it's a potential serious problem to this country. And I'm hoping that justice is served, and we get to the bottom of it and find out what went on, and also take measures to prevent this from happening. But I'm not confident it will happen soon. But yes, there is many similarities, and the Watergate thing changed America. But I don't know how this is going to ultimately play out. There's going to be a lot of people that deny it. They've been hoodwinked and brainwashed into thinking that the justice system is crooked, and you can't believe the media. Trump's done a good job on casting doubt. And
Was the country just as divided back then over the issue as they are now with Trump?
I don't think so. No, I don't. And I might be wrong. One thing, we didn't have social media. Social media has played such a big role in this. And we relied on ethics and integrity of our newspapers and our reporters. Our mainline reporters were held in high esteem. Walter Cronkite and people like that. Regardless of your political persuasion, I think most people believed in what they were saying was truthful to the best of their knowledge. And there was research, and the media made sure and double checked their sources. And I still think they do that, but Trump has done a job on casting doubts. And so, in every aspect. So that's potentially problematic. If you read any into history, Hitler and totalitarians, that's one of the ways they divide the country and cast doubt on our institutions. And that's not good. So, but as a whole, I think people were captivated in that time. Were they going to get Nixon? And who was all these bad people? Another dark moment. And so we'll see how this other thing unfolds.
So after Nixon resigned, the conservatives that had supported Nixon, did they change their minds? Was there ample evidence, or did you still have a number of people that supported Nixon and after he resigned?
Well, I don't remember exactly, but yeah, I suspect there was some within the ranks that felt that he got a raw deal. But you have to remember, back then, there was the Conservative Party, or the Republican Party, was different than it is today. There was wide bipartisan support and working together and commonality to advance America for the greater good. That's largely gone today. The moderate Republicans don't get any traction in today's environment. Yeah, you had people that crossed the aisle on a regular basis to bring the country together. And I think that was a great sentiment was, what do we need to do in this moment to bring the country together? As it was unprecedented what happened.
So were people upset when Gerald Ford pardoned Nixon?
Yes, they were. Somewhat myself. But I understood why he did it. The country had gone through so much, and what were you going to gain by sending Nixon to jail? The public humiliation and fall from grace was probably sufficient. And now that opens the door for discussion if Trump gets impeached, or and his shady deals are not going to just end at impeachment. The South District of New York can hold him for tax evasion, other criminal conduct, and I don't know what will happen there. He could go to jail before this is all through. I'm somewhat surprised that the Mueller thing has drug on this long, but also the difference there is Mueller has done a remarkable job of keeping this all in secrecy. Now the Watergate thing was all played out in front of your eyes. The people brought to testify in front of the Senate subcommittees, and it was an ongoing thing every day. And so it was a spectacle in that respect. The Mueller thing is just speculation on what may or may not happen. So I'm executive orders or privileges. Nixon tried to hold back information. Ultimately, he couldn't, and Trump's doing the same thing. He's going to try his best to mute or keep the Mueller report from being a public document. I'm not convinced that he can do that, but you know, there's this. I guess if it had more a daily testimony in the Senate, it probably be in the limelight and more conversation. The other thing, and I'd have to look back, I suspect that the Congress wasn't dominated, like the Republicans controlled all branches, and that stifled a lot of things. Now back then, Nixon might have had one branch of the government on his side, but I don't know, maybe not. And just think of the difference now. The Congress is Democratic, and so those committees are chaired by people that can ask and subpoena documents where they were being stonewalled prior to that.
So you also lived through the hippie era. To what level did you participate in the hippie culture?
I was married with kids, so well, I was basically supportive of that generation, being that I had responsibilities. I wasn't a participant, so to speak. I think I marched and demonstrated on things that were important, certainly the war issues. I worked very hard to elect George McGovern. That was, again, part of our decision to leave the church. Clearly, George McGovern was a good man, a Methodist minister, passionate in his beliefs to make the world a better place. Always a champion for the underdog, particularly poor people. He brought to light and ideas very similar to Bernie Sanders. He was ahead of his time, but it also was brought him to that position as a result of a divided nation of that time. You know, the younger people were desperate for change. They were tired of the old fuddy-duddies that had lied to them and wanted a new vision. And of course, he was smeared as being a communist and whatever else. And just foregone conclusion, that's what they'll do. Always cast doubt, always cast fear. Ooh, it's the boogeyman. Here was clearly a man who walked in the pathways of Christ and caring about the masses, and yet within the church we saw people that would rather see us blow up Vietnamese, go to war, shoot people, support somebody, Richard Nixon, who was a liar and a crook. And I don't know why, what the compelling reason why people did that. But yeah, that was my extent of, was I going to go out to the park and with all the hippies and walk around out there? No, we didn't do that. But we were concerned about America and how it could improve for our children, a fair chance for all. Very similar issues of today.
So did you ever smoke marijuana?
No, not really.
Not really? It's a yes or no question.
Well, I've had cookies that infused with marijuana, but no, I kind of felt that it wasn't a pathway I wanted to go. I never smoked cigarettes either.
What do you think about marijuana legalization then?
Well, I think it was one of those things that should have been decriminalized and looked at differently years ago. Does it solve problems by legalizing it? Not entirely. You're always going to have the black market and the crooks and all that, but basically I support and voted for legalization. You know, we incarcerate more people per capita than any other country in the world, I believe. And, you know, and it's a disproportionate amount of minorities. So justice isn't really being served. And now with legalization of pot, there may be some good medical benefits, and it should be open the door for that to be discovered.